progress daily. In order to get the opportunity, you must show up by any means, whatever it takes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lory Audate podcast. I'm Lory Audate, the co-host for the Lory Audate show. And together, Andy and we explore topics about business, sales, and personal development. How are you doing, Andy, this week?
I'm phenomenal. I'm glad to be back in the office, getting it done. I spent the last week doing a leadership training. And in that leadership training, it was really about being held accountable to hit big goals in life and to not play small and to get uncomfortable.
Yes, I definitely can relate to that. I just did my, 3-month fitness check-in, and happy to say I lost like 2.5 pounds. And I was like, finally, it's been taking so long, at least in the entire journey.
Yeah.
For a year, right? But this actually brings me to today's topics because it's been very present in our lives, business and personal, how we tackle goals. I know that many times we have goals that we do together as a couple, but then we have a lot of individual goals. Let's go into that, this week in our podcast. What are your thoughts on still setting up goals, kind of how they taught us in school, like SMART goals? Let's start with that. What are your thoughts on like SMART goals?
When we look at SMART goals is specific, measurable, like those that, and it's really about basic goals. Let me go ahead and do a little bit of research on the SMART goals on the actual meeting. So it's clear, specific, measurable, something that's achievable, relevant, and time bound. Now, specific is like goals that should be clearly defined. Okay, got that. Measurables, it should be able to be tracked. Okay, understood. Something that's achievable. And I think that's where I've always got stuck on is the idea of a SMART goal being something that's achievable, or some other people may call it attainable. And the question is like, how could you tell me what's achievable or attainable? And usually what they're doing is they're comparing it to like the average sum of people around you. So like, for example, if you're talking about income, they'll say the professors and the coaches will say, oh, well, choose a number that's achievable or choose a number that's attainable. And then how do you determine what's achievable and attainable? You look at people who are average. You look at the average sum. So if you're looking at, for example, income, let me go ahead and search. What is the average income in, let's say, in the United States? In the United States, the average income right now is $37,585. That's the average income. So most coaches are going to say, hey, choose a target that is progression compared to where you're at, but then it's also average. So if you're just starting out in your career, they're going to say the average income is 37,000. So you can aim for like 37,000 or maybe a little bit past that and go for like 39,000 or $40,000 in income. And to me, I am completely against like average. I actually wrote a book about it called No More Average, right? I wrote that book many years ago. And that was the base fundamental understanding is if you want to do anything phenomenal, you got to get away from being average and do something extraordinary.
Yes, definitely. I know there's a lot of tactics, right? Like there's a whole trend, I would say, where people say like, oh, you got to wake up at 5 a.m. or you got to do this. Like everybody has declared on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, like, no, this is the way to hit goals. But I definitely wouldn't want to overwhelm people, like wake up at 5 a.m., prep, do this, do that, grow a team. Like that would be a lot of actionable steps.
Yeah.
I think it would definitely serve audience to really bring it down to 3 things you believe are important for someone to achieve their goals, interconnected, whether it's personal or business. So what would you say number 1 of those 3 would be a strategy to reach their goals?
So number 1 thing is you actually got to do something much more the opposite of SMART goals, which is declare big. That's the number 1 thing. Declare something that is so uncomfortable, something that is like far from average, something that it's hard to even imagine, because what that does, it puts you in a position to get creative. When someone says, for example, let's use money, because money is a tool that most people need, majority, if not 99% of the United States population needs. It's something that is specific. It's something that's measurable, that you can measure. And money is a report card of how much value you're giving to the world. That's exactly what it is. It's just a report card. And so if you can declare big, let's use money as an example. That's a representation of the value that you're giving to the world. If you declare small, for example, like, hey, I want to go from, $5,000 to $5,500 in monthly income. So I'm currently making 5,000. I want to go to 5,500. I want to get a 10% increase. You can make that your target, but what actually creates a different being? What creates a different person? What creates a different leader? What creates a different entrepreneur? What creates a different team member? What creates a different husband? What creates a different father is when you declare big. And if you can declare big, so for example, someone's big who's currently making 5,000, if they can imagine saying, "Hey, I'm gonna make $50,000," and they're committed to it, they get very creative. Commitment breeds creativity. So they get very creative with how they're gonna create that result, but most importantly, what type of person that they get to be. So the 5 a.m. thing, for example, like you mentioned, like, okay, I'm not going to talk about waking up early at 5 a.m., so on and so forth. However, waking up at 5 a.m. or waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that becomes a byproduct of thinking big, because there's so much things you get to do. Now, if you're someone like me, like, okay, I can wake up at 10 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, like 10 o'clock in the afternoon.
For you, it's the afternoon because you do wake up at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, 10 o'clock in the morning is to me, does feel like the afternoon. But if I wake up at that time, then I know the amount of things that I get to get done. Like, for example, let's say if I woke up at 10 o'clock, here's what my day would look like, considering that I do a lot of the things that I do today. I would spend the first 2 hours of the morning with Damon, my coach, and we would be at the gym. So that means I woke up at 10. Well, I need to cold plunge, cold plunge, pray, read the Bible, and stretch and do breath work. So I do this, and that typically takes about an hour or so. Now I'm at 11 a.m. And then from 11 a.m., I spent 2 hours with Damon. We do our stretch, cardio, and we lift weights. That's 2 hours, and then take a shower within that 2 hours, head over to the office. So now I went from 11 a.m. to now it's 1 p.m. So 11 to 12, so it's 1 p.m. Now I'm at work at 1 p.m. Then I start my day, and I do podcasts and meetings, and that's about 6 hours of work between podcast meetings, client call, coaching, things of that nature. So now it's 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
So 7 o'clock at that point. It's 7 o'clock at night, and then I go home to spend time with you. And so if I'm getting home at 7 o'clock at night, the day ends at 7 o'clock. So it takes about 45 minutes to decompress, get to the house. Now it's 8 o'clock. Now I'm gonna start my night with you at 8 o'clock at night. That's not the life that I want to live now, and especially if I have kids, right? Especially if I have a family. So to come home at 8 o'clock and to now start the spending time with you, that's not the life that I want to live. I want to live a life where I come out and it's daylight, and the rest of the world is awake, the rest of my world is awake. So to accomplish the things I accomplish, I reverse engineer, and I'm like, okay, the math says that I get to wake up at 3:55. My alarm gets to ring at 3:55 in the morning, and then by 4:30, I'm already outside doing my cold plunge and stretching and things of that nature.
Yes, I agree. And you mentioned something very important there, which is the 5 a.m. is a byproduct, right? Like when me and you write goals or we share, hey, I have a new goal. I never say like my goal is to start cooking at 6:30 in the morning. That's not my goal in life. The goal is that I want to be healthy and energized, not through caffeine, not through supplements and things of that sort. And very similar to what you just shared is, if my goal is X, then what does it take to do that, right? And I think that's where the 5 a.m. people or the 5 a.m. club or the 5 a.m. concept came. The goal is not to wake up at 5 a.m. just to be mad that you're waking up at 5 a.m. It's a byproduct of the major goal that you set. So when me and you established a goal, like we want to reach X amount in the business, we only want to work this many hours, we pretty much had to make some tough choices. What does that entail? Oh, well, it ends up being that we start at this time and it ends at this time. And that's that. That is an important element. I think by establishing a big goal, let's say someone says, I'm only making $5,000 a month. It's cutting it close on the bills and operation costs. What will it take to hit 20,000? I would bet that their calendar would look a little bit different. Would you agree?
Yeah, if you're currently making 5,000, like you said, and if they need an extra $1,000, when you declare an extra $1,000, you fail. You'll miss the target most of the time. 9 out of 10 times you'll miss the target. So because you put 5,000, because you're not really understanding how much effort it's going to actually take to make the extra 1,000 or the extra $2,000 that you need if you're currently making 5,000. Which today in my eyes, like, it's very small numbers. However, but that's the reality of most of America, right? If the average income is $37,000 in America, that's the reality of it. But if you're making $37,000, if you can identify the skills, the processes, the mindset of someone making six figures, even if your goal is to make an extra $10,000, you're making $37,000 right now, you want to make an extra 47. If you can identify the skills, the processes, the mindset, the relationships of someone making six figures, your income is going to change regardless if you make six figures or not. Because if you're making $37,000, like I saw when I searched online, what is the average household? What is the median income in the United States of America? It was $37,585 in 2022. That was the average median income. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying, hey, I want to make an extra $10,000 this year, which that is going to be about like $800 and change per month, an extra. Okay. When someone can identify and say, okay, just an extra 10,000. So that's only $47,000 extra, or $47,000 in total income for the year. It's a small increase. However, if you can, that person can hang out with some six-figure earners, understand what does a six-figure earner do, what does their calendar look like, what does their schedule look like, what does their mindset look like, then they'll be able to identify, okay, I surpassed the 10,000, and that's typically the outcome. They'll surpass the 10,000 that they originally needed because they were hanging around with people who were much more advanced with them than they were. So that's going to be number two, is to get around others who are already at the stage that you want to be in. You want to get around other people who are at a completely different stage. And if you can spend some time, if you're currently a 5-figure earner and you spend some time with a 6-figure earner, then you're going to create different results. Same thing, for example, I am on a fitness journey. I'm on my own fitness journey. And I start looking at some of the things that I can accomplish. Like yesterday it's like 6:00 in the morning, and Damon and I are doing farmer's carry for a few miles. And if you don't know what a farmer's carry is, in this scenario, I take a 25-pound plate and I put one in my left hand and one in my right hand, and I walk around the entire track. Okay, I walk around the entire track, and we go for, yesterday was 20 laps. So I take the 25-pound weight on both hands. So that's a total of 50 pounds that I'm carrying, and then I walk around one, and then I drop the weight, and then I run. Okay, I drop the weight and I run as fast as I can, get the weight again, and I go back around. Okay, I go back around slowly not slowly, but I walk around with the weight. So weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off. And I did that for 3 miles. When I first started my fitness journey, if you told me that I was going to, just in the morning, right before work, go run 3 miles, holding extra weights, and then do that for a few miles, and that just starts the workout, because that just started the workout. We ended up doing a lot of other stuff afterwards. That's just the warm-up, essentially. So we stretch and then do that, and that's the warm-up. If you told me that 4 years ago, I would be like, that's nuts. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I declared big. The big for me at the time was to do a trifecta. Right? You did a trifecta. I'm inspired by you doing the trifecta. I'm impressed and I'm inspired. A trifecta is, you want to explain what a trifecta is?
Yeah, so essentially part of the Spartan brand, the Spartan races, they're all over the world. And Trifecta is doing the 3 levels of the races in a span of 12 months. The first race is a little bit over 3 miles. Second race, I believe, is like, is it 6 or 8 miles? 7 miles, yeah. And then the third one, the hardest one, is 13 miles. And they have obstacle courses, rope climb, monkey bar. So it's not like just running. It requires all parts of your body, upper body, endurance, stamina, and speed, because you don't want to be out there for hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're going through the mud.
Yeah, you're going through the mud, you're carrying heavy stuff. And also it averages out, if you pace them for 12 months, it's about 1 race every 3 or 4 months, depending which city you decide to race. So every 90 days, you're going to get a race to go run.
So my big was, so here's the steps. Number 1 is declare big. Number 2 is you get around people who are already at the stage that you are at. And number 3 is get held accountable. That's the system.
Right.
So the number 1 thing for me, like, I declared big. The big for me was to do a trifecta. So a couple years ago, Lory has done a trifecta. She's done, and I was inspired. And then I'm like, I don't understand this world of like Spartan races and getting obstacle races where I'm in the mud and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I want to do that. I want to run a trifecta, a 3 mile, a 7 mile, and a 13-mile run. And it's not like a marathon or anything. It's that you're carrying stuff. You're carrying buckets. You're going through the mud. You're going up and down hills. It's not like running on the road. That's simple compared to this stuff. So then I said I wanted to do the trifecta, and I got a coach. The coach that I did has done 50 races, 50 plus races. Mm-hmm. So he's well versed in that type of workout. He understands how to work out because he's done over 50 races. He's done every state, every city that they have had. And so I spent a whole month with him, and I lived with him for a month to kickstart this journey. And the first step was like, hey, let's not even think about racing right now. Let's just get some weight off of you, right? Start to create that level of comfortability.
Yeah.
But today, so that was 2 years ago. I could barely do 1 mile 2 years ago or a year ago. And then now, just for breakfast, we're doing 3-4 miles. I've done 4-mile runs in the morning, 5-mile runs. We've done 6 miles where we're like, hey, let's go run 6 miles, come back, then start work. And that starts the day. So what I'm sharing with you is whatever you're looking to accomplish in life, whether it's more money, whether it's relationship goals. Like in my relationship with Lory, the first thing I started to do before I even met Lory and started dating Lory, I spent time with people who are married. I would go live. I wouldn't live there, but I would go spend some quality.
Just moved in with married couples.
I spent quality time with people who were married. So I remember, like, for example, I had a friend. His name was Brandon, and his wife was Brandon was black, and his wife was Mexican. And ironically, right? And
what a coincidence,
right? Then they have a white puppy. They have a white puppy. Ironically, yeah. And they have a white puppy, and we have a white puppy as well.
We do, yeah.
Good times. And then I went to go spend some time. Like, they got married, and I went to go spend some time with them. And I went to their house, and I was like, "What is it like?" And I would have one-on-one conversations with him. I was like, "What is it like to be married, man? Like, what is that experience like? What are the challenges? What are the realities of it? There's a perception on social media of what marriage is like, but tell me, what is it like?" And then he would express to me, like, this is what it's like. And I would spend time with other married couples at different stages, people who are newlyweds, people who are, completely been married for 30, 40, 50 years. And through the interim, I'm like, what should I expect, and what's the reality, so that way I can do it right, or at least do it in a way that creates progression for me. So these are the steps, man. Declare big. So, I mean, you can't really, there's not much to declare as far as big in marriage besides who you marry. All right. It's not like I'm going to be marrying 3 people. I'm not going to say I want to have 3 wives or 5 wives or 10 wives. But the big for me in marriage could be like the type of person I want to marry, right? The person I want to attract. And then number 2 was get around people who are at that stage. So I spent time with married people. And then get held accountable. So I joined men's groups and church groups who held me accountable before I even met Lory. Before I even met Lory, I was already grooming to be a husband. I got stories about me wearing wedding rings saying, I declared that I'm going to have my wife, I'm going to get married to the right wife. And that happened before I even met Lory.
Yes. And I think, well, with that being said, so you declare big, number 1, to the level that you're uncomfortable, right? Because I do think that if the goal is achievable and it's very like, oh, yes, I'll be fine, I know I can hit that, it's not going to put that pressure cooker type of results. Like, some of the best results we've had in our teams, in the business, and our relationship have been like a lot of sudden change. Now, is it uncomfortable? Yes. Is it stressful? Yes. But at the end, we're always like, whoa, we're so glad we did that. Like, some of the things have been, we want to post 5 times a week or 10 times a week. And that was uncomfortable. And we went from 0 to doing it. Right.
Yeah.
We've had fitness goals, like you mentioned, like Spartan races. And I'm like, whoa, we're barely in town. How are we going to add more races, more time, things of that sort? For me, it was important in the last year to be part of a women's group at church. I'm looking at my calendar and I was like, how? I can barely get enough sleep. I can barely get my own personal time. More than a year has gone by. I had someone like ask me, like, how did you do it? And I was like, I put it on my calendar, like an appointment. Because I said, whether I'm tired, exhausted, grumpy, not feeling it, I still showed up, to where now, like, that's my normal. Every Tuesday, I go to women's group. But in the beginning, like the first 6 months, I remember having to take like shots of caffeine. Like I gotta take a shot just because it goes until 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m. Is it uncomfortable? 100%. Do I feel a little bit more tired on Wednesdays? Yes. But to me, that was a very high priority item in personal growth. So with that being said, what do you think would happen if someone didn't have one of the three? So for me, the women's group, if I don't go, they're going to text me like, how are you doing? Like, we didn't see you. For you, your
that's
coach.
Number 3, being held accountable.
Yeah. What do you think if they just decide to do only one or two, or one and number 3? What do you think happens in that scenario? What's most likely to happen?
If you declare big and you are around, it's actually very likely if you're around people, because as a byproduct, you're held accountable because it's the culture of that group that you're with.
Right.
You know, I spend time with people who are super fit. It's a byproduct that I'm eating salads. You know, like it's just a byproduct that I'm eating certain foods, right? And I spend time with people who are making money. It's a byproduct that you end up start making money. I remember a couple of years ago, I started hanging around with my mentor, and I went from. This was at a time that I was living in this is not a couple years ago, this is a long time ago, but I was living in an apartment with a bunch of guys, and these guys were, they were great, they're great friends. However, most of the guys were like just kind of figuring out how to make money. And then, so that's who my buddies were, that's who the people I was hanging out with, right? And then I started hanging out with a mentor, and everyone in that social circle was driving Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, and they were making a bunch of money. And then I noticed that when I started to hang out with my mentors, my friends, I was just making 5 figures. I went from 0 revenue, damn near per month, to multiple 5 figures per month. And I was like, oh, even just the connection made a big change. And to the point where it's like, hey, let's level up the car, going from a Honda to a Mercedes Benz, right? And it's like, oh, that's a small thing compared to the vision, compared to your friendships, right? When your friends that you're around are like players, right? When they're driving Mercedes Benz of the year and they're driving upgraded cars and things of that nature. So it's all depending about who you spend time with.
Definitely. And with that being said, also, as you mentioned, it's who you spend your time around with is important, because they're either going to help you push you to the next level, or you're just going to stay stagnant, which means no growth. Do you think there's a connection with how personal goals and business goals? Is there a connection with both? Like, if you're also doing personal goals, will that translate to business, and vice versa? If you do business goals, does it also change how you approach your personal life?
Yeah, I think it's all relative. The way you do one thing is how you do everything. So you do something in your business life, it's going to reflect in your other areas of your life. So as we wrap up on this podcast, it's really going to be about declaring big in all areas. Declare big with your money, declare big with your health, declare big with your relationships, declare big. I talked to Lory, for us, our big right now is buying a private jet, like having a private jet with our name to be able to travel from one place to the other place. And that's our big, and then now, so I get to be around people who are there, who are doing it. So I was, for example, once I started to declare that, I said, I need to get people who've like ran businesses at 9 figures or who've exited businesses, because if you know about my goal with our software, we're building $100 million software company. I don't think it was an accident that a couple of weeks ago, I was spending time with a gentleman who exited his business for $176 million, right? And we're chopping it up and talking. So I don't think it goes to show that when you declare and you get around the right type of people, success is a byproduct.
I agree. Well, I hope that this was helpful for anybody that's looking to just revamp or establish their goals, both personal and business. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Make sure to subscribe. That way you can get an alert every time we go live. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.